Please, round of applause for Zain.
Thank you, and appreciate you guys inviting me here to talk. I thought I was going to be on the panel, and then I got removed. And then they told me I'm doing a talk, so let's get into it. So, hi everyone, I'm Zain, and I'm a designer, creative, director. I really dislike labels, but I like to think of myself as a truth seeker. I like to bring things to the light. And I pocketed the remote. I was about to take that. Yeah, so I love early stage startups, and everyone that echoed all of those sentiments about working with founders and being the founding designer deeply resonated with me. I was the first designer at Got Game, Sim Raceway, Sincerely, Instacart, Y Combinator, all this stuff. And but what does it mean to be the first designer? And we got a bit of that, but I want to tell you a little bit about why I choose to be a founding designer and why I like to create. Recently, I built a sustainable outdoor gear company called Nature's Keeper. I currently live in Lake Tahoe, and so I've been building this brand because I want to tell the stories that nature has inspired me to tell. And so a lot of the gear I make is right out of my garage in Lake Tahoe. I'm doing a little brand building. My website sucks to make it seem like I'm not great at what I'm doing, because later when the design's really great, you're going to think that you grew with me. You get what I'm saying? I want to start off with this quote by Bayo Kamalafe. He recently said this in a lecture. He said, "We're in such times that being good is not enough. Being bad is just as such, and being sensuous is the thing to do." He mentioned moving past familiar shorelines into the depth of the unknown. For me, this means bringing truth to light. To go into the unknown is only when we can begin to understand, and when we begin to understand is only when we can create. He talked about the trickster that introduces us to the violence of interruption and normativity. You see, the death spiral that these ants are in, they don't know they're in it. They're just going. And the ones behind them are saying, keep going, we'll get there eventually. And so you see, when people talk about hitting a local maxima, we probably were only working from extraction. When companies like Instacart or other big companies tend to plateau, they tended to only focus on extracting value and taking things, right? And that's when you end up with a homepage with promotions and free delivery, and buy this. But you're like, wait, I just wanted to get the things I love, to do the things I want to do. So in losing our way, we end up having to find new paths and possibilities. We have to let go of what was and take with us what holds together these moments that are changing. As we write these stories, we're creating something new. So the way we narrate our experiences shape our perception of reality. We as designers play a role in shaping the reality around us. If an artist's role is to paint the grim reality that we face, a designer's role is to create the future that we deserve. And I did just that when I got to Instacart. Before I even got there, I wrote groceries delivered in an hour before I even joined the company. And I brought that into my interview, and I redesigned the app the night before I went and talked to Max Mullen, one of the founders, because I wanted to create the reality around me that I believe to be true, which was everybody eats, and if we want to get people fresh groceries, then they deserve to get what they want when they want it, so they can spend the time with the people that they love. I can tell you all about this quick add button that makes tons of GMV. RST knows about this. I made that. Honestly, I took it from Muntree, RIP, or sorry, but I saw it on, seriously, I'm telling you guys the truth. Like, they had this mechanic on Muntree where you could, add meals to your cart. But who's adding like 100 meals to your cart, right? No offense to them. I think it was amazing, right? And it got me Matt. And so thanks for that. But for me, this is not why I got into design. For me, it's about, if you're not dying on the hill, then what are you designing for? If you're creating something new, something has to die. That is the rule of the universe. So what I did was created that reality that I wanted to see, which was around me. I went and found those customers that represent the product that we lived in, right? This was the world that I was living in. But if you go to ChatGPT today and say, hey, generate an image of someone receiving groceries, it's going to be a white person 10 out of 10 times, I guarantee you. This was an extremely important photo shoot for me to do, to create the reality around us that people believed not to be true. When I did this, there was a lot of resistance in the company. Not from the executives, but from people who are married to the data. But Zain, our data shows that only white people are buying Instacart groceries. I was like, and then what does that mean? Does that mean that black and brown people don't eat groceries? They don't want the grocery delivery? Come on, guys, that's crazy. So I went and I doubled down on that narrative and I wrote about it, which is crazy. I shouldn't have to write about it, but I wrote about it. I elaborated about it because it helped me plant the flag so that everybody in the organization will believe that to be true and uphold that. So now I've been gone how long? 5 years? They still shoot photos like that. So communicating the value of design is extremely important. I'm sure a lot of you have trouble communicating the value of design. Raise your hand if it's tough in your organization. It's hard. You got to galvanize people. You got to get them to not just see the pixels. When they see your design, they're like, why is that red? And you're like, you missed the whole point. What? And so a lot of this as a founding designer is empowering those around you with the right tools and the right knowledge, the right data to help them tell that story through the work they're doing. And I did this a lot with our executives. It made people deeply uncomfortable that a designer was spending all this time with the executives whenever he wanted, because I was shaping the reality that Instacart was. And so our CFO, Ravi, ended up sharing with the company about how he felt about design.
And that, it means actually changing what we do. It's like when I see people say that our brand art is not representative of, the world around us, it means actually seeing something I've been really proud of people actually making that change, right? And changing the brand art to reflect, the world around us and the world that we want to live in. So I think that it means celebrating it when we are doing that, but it also means taking other folks aside and talking to them when we're not, and making sure that we practice it every single day. It's not enough just to be open. It's not enough just to listen. We actually have to change behavior and reflect it and practice it every single day.
All right, so the reason why I had to share that was this came to be because we spent time together talking about the value of design. Ravi approved my photo shoots, right? I was a product designer. He approved my photo shoots, my video shoots, right? Because I communicated what the value that design was going to bring by doing those things. Oh, and then now we're just going to watch it again. Just do it again. So as we create from that uncomfortable space, through this journey, I had to face my own deep water. In 2016, just only a couple of years into Instacart, my father passed. He was a chef, he was a restaurateur, he built brands, and he was my inspiration. He taught me how to create. And so I had to create from a place of darkness. And through that process of grieving, I was able to bring my creations to light. So food is extremely deeply personal to me, as you can tell. I learned how to cook in my dad's restaurant. He would leave me at the restaurant when I was 15 years old to just close the restaurant and cook for people and run the register by myself. And I love it. My girlfriend's here, and she does not like to be in the kitchen when I'm cooking because it's very intense. So Instacart was deeply personal to me. I'd been there at the beginning. We had maybe 1,000 employees. We were in the hyper growth stage. And I felt the need to protect my baby. I led our marketing efforts while building product, while building the customer app, while building the shopper app, while building the admin, the partner tools, the catalog tools, the ad tools. I helped build these early products because I knew that that was the thing to do. And through that process, I learned that you cannot save what you don't love, and you don't love what you don't consider sacred. And so because Instacart was so close to me, I felt the need to go and push through that dark place. So we were here, groceries delivered in an hour, right? RST remembers this moment. We hit our local maxima. We did grocery delivery really well, but that was it. And I got to bring really great people in like RST, who's sitting right here, to help lead the team. And we co-led a redesign effort of the app and the brand. But first, we had to be the voice of the marginal user. We had to go into deep water to do the understand work. And so tons and tons of sticky notes and going to customers' houses and going through the refrigerators and their cabinets and seeing their kids screaming because they didn't get their grapes. It really illuminates, to light what type of work you really need to be focusing on. And that allowed us to go and create and build something that people want. And so Instacart was this really fun journey. But beyond that, I realized that that journey of creation was not over for me. I wanted more. Like Darren was talking about, I had that Mamba mentality. And so I wanted to go to Y Combinator and focus on helping founders build startups. We've been led to believe that there's a secret formula for thinking, acting, and making decisions, a method that only a select few have mastered and that we need to adopt to pursue our dreams. When I got to YC, they told me not to touch it. They hired me as a designer and said, don't touch it. I'm serious. It had been 10 years since the website had changed. The exclusive boys club was gatekept for a reason. And they felt that they didn't need to change anything that they were doing because what they were doing was working. And it was hard to argue against that, right? The data was telling us that. We had like billions in the bank. But they were just so bent on making sure that YC was harder to get in to than Harvard. And I get that. I think we need to screen people that were coming in. We don't want to just give anybody a check. But at this point, the challenge I had just entered was, how do we open access to building startups? How do we democratize access to funding and startup knowledge so that anyone in the world can build a successful company? And we just entered the COVID-19 pandemic, which we still haven't mourned and grieved. And we had to learn how to take YC remote. How do you run a batch program of hundreds of companies remote? And you guys were in the batch that went remote in that moment and didn't get a demo day, unfortunately. And it hurt a lot of companies because we didn't act fast enough. Demo day was right when the pandemic started, and we were about to do it at the pier over here, and we were unable to execute it. And so those founders didn't get that day to go and try and raise money. So that uphill battle that I was facing, I told them, I was like, hey, we got to build the biggest stage for startups. They didn't believe me. They said, why? Why would we hold hands with these founders? The ones that are amazing do it by themselves. Brian Chesky, Brian Armstrong, Apoorva Mehta, all these people did it by just grinding, by not going to their friends' birthdays, by ignoring their families, by doing all this stuff. I'm not talking junk about YC. I love YC. But what I'm telling you is the way we were doing things is not going to get us to where we're trying to go. So we built the biggest stage for founders to talk about their companies. And so I built the company directory. I don't like these pixels, by the way. And so I had to stick to the thing, what they were doing. And so, but you build something that you start from first principles. I think Michael was talking about this, is we have to start from first principles. And for me, I was like, I can't do any work. I have no surface area to work from. What do you want me to do? And so I was like, I can just look cool, it's fine. But the reality is there was nothing for us to help the founders with besides just getting them into the batch and talking to them and pretending like we knew their business better than they did. And so when we built the company directory that allowed these companies to shine, but one of the first things I was told was, you're not going to get these thousands of companies to give you all their information to put up on the website. There's no way. Well, I was like, all right, I'll just email them. So I emailed the thousands of founders that have been in YC, and we got like a 98% response rate of filling in their company data. And that allowed me to go and put jobs on those company pages. And now they had work at a startup closed off, and it was a garbage, job application website. And I turned that into a full-on ATS system and connected it and exposed it to the world. So that now when you Google startup jobs in Silicon Valley or whatever, YC ranks as the #1 link. But we had another challenge. The founders keep sharing all this cool information that other people shouldn't know. So the content keeps getting leaked. What do we do about it? All the information about investors, all the information about, how to get this deal or how to work on, build this company, do this thing, this growth strategy. They didn't like that founders were sharing this exclusive knowledge. So what do we do about it, Zain? I was like, release the library. So we put out the startup library, and it became the #1 destination for how to build a startup on the internet. And all we had to do was just expose it. It looks just like the directory, right? That wasn't hard. But now we've gone and worked towards that goal of democratizing access on how to build a successful company. And my argument was, look, if the information is out there, why don't you just tell them that you're the one that said it? Because then everyone's going to go, hey, I want to go with them because they said it. So tell the stories. And when the challenge that came up was when people got to demo day and you're clamoring for all this press, and Kat Minyalek is trying to run press for 200 companies and using her personal contacts to reach out to all these, news companies to write about them, they stopped responding. They're like, we'll write about like the few. We're over this, right? And we also had a couple other things where founders were talking about their launches internally, right? Behind the scenes in YC, the stuff that you guys don't see. They're telling us really cool stories. Like, hey, I started this company because I went through this crazy experience, and this is why we got here. And then all the founders in YC go, wow, great job. And then and that's it. And then they launch on Product Hunt, and then they do it again, and that's it. And it falls flat. And so I told him, I was like, hey, let's tell the stories. So we built Launch YC, and we exposed those stories. And it's different because a company page, well, guess what? A company has a bunch of pieces of software usually. So every time they went to launch new software, they could launch it on Launch YC and tell that story. And now you can hear why they built what they built. And now they can point to that to investors and go, hey, this is what our story is. And so YC became its own PR company overnight. And now Launch YC is where all founders in YC go to launch. And this brought truth to light. So how do we hold each other through this time without a promise of that shoreline, that familiar shoreline, right? It's really uncomfortable right now. People are like, design doesn't matter. Oh, I can just use AI and just generate whatever I want, right? So how do we hold each other through this? And again, I'm just going to push you to go into that unknown, to create the reality that you want us to perceive. You see, we only have one opportunity to do this. And so that little voice inside of you that's saying, hey, this person that's resisting me, the CTO or the PM that's saying, nah, that doesn't matter. But that little voice is saying, hey, that welcome, that onboarding, the way I make them feel really matters. Listen to that inner voice and speak up. Thank you.
Please sit, Zain. Yeah. Wow. As you can tell from my hat, we had no idea what Zain was going to say today, but it was a great talk. What I wanted to ask you about was, it's about before where you are now. Like designers, or really like I think anyone that has a vision or has something to say, before they get to the place that you very clearly are at, where you feel comfortable in your square, you know what you believe, you're ready to tell it to a room full of 100+ people, or an executive that's raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Before that, though, when you're still coming up, like, we walk into every room that we're in with truths that we hold. And oftentimes, the rooms that we try to go into, especially if we're strivers, are filled with people that have clout, they have leverage, they have your future in their hands, right? And you may believe something that could rattle that room or could turn it off. So when that time comes, that like inner voice is speaking to you to say something, but you don't feel like you're there yet, that you don't have the strength of ego, how do you make sure that voice gets out?
Yeah, I love that. I think, look, before Instacart, I was just grinding. Like I told you, we were in a little room in Soma making the early version of the sneakers app. I was here just to create for fun. I love it. I didn't get into design because of startups. I didn't know what a startup was in 2006 when I came to San Francisco. Right, the first startup I joined was in 2008. And look, I will say this, like, I come from a place of privilege. Like my sister's here. We had a little tough time growing up, but you know, she helped me make the decision to come here. And once I was here, I felt safe because I was around similarly minded people. And so when I met David Hua, who's the founder of Got Game, and I ended up working with it sincerely, and I helped him build Meadow, got into YC, and he helped me get into Instacart after we sold Sincerely, and he helped me get into YC after that. Like, look, like, that was somebody who let my voice be heard. That was somebody who believed what I was bringing to the table. And what I would say is, like I said, it's a position of privilege, right? The first person I could have met could have shut down all my ideas. The second person I worked with after that, literally in the same office, Got Game went out of business. In the same office, I had a new boss. I worked at a new company, and I had them move in there. And so we were building this motorsport company, and this guy literally would make me, we had a website. We were building a motorsport gaming company, and we had a website that was all black. And he would make me print mock-ups out on a printer. Black website on a printer. Every page. And I would go upstairs into the loft, right? It's like a loft in Soma. And I would show him, hey, I was 19. I'd show him, hey, here's the designs. And he would go, he's from London, and he'd go, nah, mate. And he'd crumple it up and just toss it in the corner of the room. No trash can over there, just toss it in the room. And you look, and there's 100 other pieces of crumpled paper from the last month that I've been working there till 2 a.m. doing this with him. And it was extremely painful. It took me a long time to come back from that experience. I worked with him for a couple of years. I got to do the coolest stuff. I got to meet all these amazing motorsport drivers and stuff around the world, but I finally realized at one point he was holding me back. And I was fortunate enough that David Hua came back into my life. He literally would ride a scooter, not the electric ones, And he would come to Sincerely outside the office, and he would yell, which was his old apartment, and he would yell for me. And he would try and poach me to go work at Sincerely. And I realized once I had gone there, once I left and went to Sincerely, I was again around people who wanted to uplift me. And that's where I joined this really small team, and they were all engineers, and I had a PC I told you guys this, I had the PC laptop, and they were like, what the heck are you doing? And I finally got a MacBook. They helped me set up an environment, and I started learning how to code. And learning how to empathize with the builders and become a builder myself transformed me into a founder, even though I was a designer. Because at that moment, I learned how to think about growth. I learned how to actually go and drive those experiments myself, track them, and report it back to the company. So I was running all of that by myself. And the iOS engineers were doing their thing, but I was doing all the front end and the web apps and stuff. And so that pushed me into the place of, hey, these guys made a safe space for me to just execute. That once we sold the company, I looked at them and I was like, I need something big. And then that's when I got introduced to Max. And so that whole journey was difficult, but at the same time, like, if you're not passionate about it, if you're not really trying to grind, then you're not really going to learn. If you're just in it for the money, then like it ain't going to come. I'm going to tell you that. Like it has to come from that unknown. And so to get to that place of being confident in a room, I mean, when I left Instacart, the last thing that Max Mullen said to me, and he helped me get into YC as well, he was like, I love this for you, but I'm so upset about helping you transition, because we loved working together. And the last thing he said to me was like, you know what? You got a reputation for being a loose cannon. And I was like, it got us here.
There you go. Now I think it would be good to hear some questions from the audience. So does anyone have a question? Okay, let's go with you. If you want to introduce yourself real quick. And
Sure. Thanks everyone on the panel, as well as incredible story. My name is Astha. I'm not a designer, I'm a CEO, and I'm here as a founder. And that's why I wanted to hear the designer perspective from you all, is that what makes joining a startup very attractive to a designer? Because it's the different thing. We've been talking about, like, okay, how does a designer get to a startup? But here I am, because we're early stage, super early stage. We haven't raised any funds. We'll start raising next month. But I myself come from a creative background, and I would love to partner with a designer, but again, the reality is you can't pay right now. And so that's the expectation, is that, like, yes, you'll get to work on all these cool things, but there's hardly any money, as you said that, and won't be possibly for some time. So what is it that's the most attractive thing, other than storytelling and, of course, the kind of work that would be helpful in attracting the right talent?
Yeah, I love this question. This is so hard for a lot of people, especially folks who have like engineering backgrounds. Like, how do I talk to a designer? It's trust. Trust us. We are radically empathetic, and more empathetic than most people. And this is something I told all the YC founders during COVID. They're like, why aren't my designers working? I was like, it's the beginning of a pandemic. They're feeling what it's like to be all these people that are suffering. And they're trying to empathize with that and understand how they can help them. And so what I would say is, how can you help me build an understanding how to empathize with your end user, your end customer? But first, that starts with your vision. First, I get inspired by your vision. What's your company? What do you guys do?
So we're, like, again, in stealth, but we've launched our MVP with 60 users. It's a consumer app, and we're building an AI platform that combines content, community, and commerce. So think of it as like Pinterest, Instagram meets Etsy meets Reddit, but it's very personalized for you. And we're doing it for home category. So it's like where you find the inspiration, and communities right there, and products are right there, all in one place. You don't have to go through like 5 platforms.
That's awesome. I love that. I think you have to start with not that. Because it's so tactical, right? And obviously I want to understand how your business works and stuff, but you got to sell me on the vision. What are people experience once they have this? What is the emotion that we are trying to invoke? And the more you echo that to me, the more I'm going to get excited and go, what? I didn't know that about those. I didn't know that about that problem. That's crazy. I didn't know about that opportunity. I didn't realize that. Tell me more, right? And you're trying to put me into your universe, right? So think of it as theater. You're coordinating this theatrical play to sell someone like an investor, but in this case, it's a designer. And it comes back to trust. So if I were to come and do this with you, and you're not going to pay me that much money, you're promising me some equity, well, what's the field I get to play in? Are you going to let me run wild? Are you going to trust me to do the things that I'm an expert at? And I'll tell you this, like the people that leveraged me the best were the people that did that. Was it Max Mullen, was David Hua, was Matt Brzezina, these people who created a safe space and trusted me to do what I do. When I joined Instacart, I sat next to Max and he looked at me and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, I hired you because I trust you. Like, do what you believe is right. And that's why I was talking about bringing truth to the light, was he allowed me that space to go and create that reality that I believe to be true. And so that whole open playing field wasn't just the app, right? It's so easy for me to work on the app, right? It's like, today, come on, you guys, like ChatGPT will literally tell you the strategy of Instacart's UI. Like, it's not that crazy. So what are we doing beyond that? And that's why I was talking about going into the unknown. And that's something you have to do as a founder. You have to really tell people like why you're doing this, why you believe you're going to do this for more than 10 years. Because if you're not selling me, why would I come spend 4 years investing with you? That's crazy. That's a lot of life. I only spent 6 years at Instacart. It's almost been 5 since I left. Yeah.
Who else has a question? Okay, yeah, right here.
Hi, folks. My name is Mattia, and you're talking about, on one side, understanding customer and empathy, and then on the other side, just getting your passion out there and what you truly love. My question is, what is the technique you use to put yourself in the shoes of that person there when you are creating a feature, when you are creating a customer journey, and the whole experience in order to achieve that moment? Thank you.
Yeah, how do I put myself and empathize with those people? How do I put myself in their shoes and empathize with them? It's a great question. I think, like I think I talked about this on the podcast, which was one of the most important moments in my career was when I first started working at Instacart, and I sent the first design to my mom, and she was on FaceTime with me, and she was like, I couldn't read it. Like I had to put my glasses on, and that just shattered my world. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been designing all wrong this whole time. I was a cool designer. I designed cool shit that didn't matter, right? And so in that moment, I had to empathize with my mom. It was not that old. It was like, oh my gosh, I need to think about this customer because I am a millennial kid. I think I was 25 at the time in San Francisco, eating catered lunch, friggin' going to bars and not eating, regular meals, right? I was not ordering groceries. And so in that moment, I realized oh my gosh, I have to go and talk to moms. And so when that happened, Max and I ended up going to Whole Foods on 4th and Harrison, and And we walked in there and we stood in front of the grocery store, and I told any mom that was going in, I say, hey, I'll buy your groceries, you test this app for me. And I'd walk around the store with them and see everything they bought, and then I would check out, I'd pay for it, and then, you know, they would tell me what they thought. And the whole time we would have a very, you know, deep conversation about what it's like to be a mother, especially in San Francisco. How do you go shopping? What do your kids eat? All these things. That was 2013. And so that really helped me build that empathy and that skill. And I had been doing that at Sincerely. We did it at the Westfield Mall. We were getting people to send greeting cards. Very similar market. You know, a lot of moms do that, and they send their, you know, a lot of family members greeting cards and stuff. So I had that habit of talking to people, and that was really uncomfortable. But I built it up that it was fun, right? You know, someone was talking about sliding in the DMs of your customers. You're that early. It's like people are talking about your product, you get to talk to them, and that's what a founder does, and that's what they tell you in YC. You can't truly build something people want without empathizing with them. But the other piece there is like, there's a passion piece, which is the piece that it's like, I believe to be true, but how do I find that truth without expending tons of resources, right? I can't just get this engineer to build whatever, make a video intro to the app and tell you all. It's like, no, I have to kind of hack my way there and build some data around validating that. So some of that's just rapid prototyping, putting something in people's faces. Sometimes that's just the wow factor. You go to your team and you're like, yo, check this out. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't believe it could be like this. But a lot of times we end up in that death spiral, and you just end up just following what you know. And so it takes someone to build this muscle. But I would say a lot of times there's not really a good framework besides going out and doing the research and surrendering.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Who's got like a really good question? Okay, I saw your hand there first, so excuse me.
I really appreciate all your stories you've shared of dying on the hill and convincing execs and founders to think about a bigger vision for what the product could be. Clearly, you did all of that, coming up with that on your own, if you were convincing them. So how did you decide what to push for?
So I'll tell you this, I used to be a pro Call of Duty player before all of this, so I died a lot. On a serious note, like I'm glad you asked this, because I thought this was going to come across like that. Like, I was willing to die on any hill though, and that's why I said Max called me a loose cannon, because I tended to speak my mind a lot. And because I was there so early and we were growing, I had the benefit that the company was growing fast. And so people were coming in with new ideas and things like that. And we either had to, you know, execute those, or we had to go, hey, the data's saying this, or research says this. And so I had to keep myself well informed constantly. And that's why I didn't just sit behind the computer and only work on the product. I was constantly out there in the grocery stores. I was the only person in the company that flew to every city that Instacart had in the middle during that time, and talked to every city manager, every city ops person, shoppers. I interviewed them. I put them in videos. I empowered them. I illuminated their stories, from deaf shoppers to shoppers who had multiple jobs, all kinds of stuff. And I told those stories, and most of those didn't even see the light of day publicly. They were internal stories to rally and galvanize everybody behind this mission, because I believed it so hard. And I believe that if others saw that I believe it that much, then you're going to do the right thing too. And so when you see me dying on a hill, you might come and support me, because one person looks crazy, but a group of people look like they know what they're doing. And so you go and get those people on your side. And I got RST on my side at one point. He came in and he was my ally to help build other parts in the organization. And that's how you go and find people who are willing to fight that good fight with you. And if there are no other designers, then hopefully it's your founders. And if not, leave.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to just close this out with a few remarks. So Harrison, if you want to get up here.